Exposed, the sinister secrets of a cursed zombie outbreak that haunts Chicago PD's darkest days. Ella sat in the dimly lit diner, her heart racing as she wiped the counter for the umpteenth time. The city outside was a heartbeat of chaos. Sirens screamed in the distance, drowning out the laughter of children who once played on the streets. Chicago had become a terrifying maze filled with shadows, and Ella felt the weight of that darkness pressing down on her. Alone, now more than ever, she juggled 2 jobs while worrying about her teenage son, Tyler, who rode his bike after school through the eerily empty streets. Her gut twisted with fear. Just another night, she whispered to herself, but the unease clung to her like a second skin. And then the phone rang. It was her estranged brother, a former cop, his voice frantic. "Ella, you need to listen to me. There's something happening here. It's a zombie outbreak." She scoffed, rolling her eyes, dismissing his words as madness. But then again, she noticed the disappearances in their neighborhood, the hush that had settled like a shroud over once vibrant lives. Before she could shake it off, Tyler burst through the door, the fear in his eyes striking her like a slap. "Mom!" he gasped. "I saw Mr. Jennings. He was changed." He described the horrifying transformation: skin peeling, eyes empty, a hollow moan escaping his lips. This savage image made Ella's heart stutter. This wasn't normal. And her brother's call echoed in her mind. She needed to take action. Ella called the police station, hoping for help, only to be met with indifference. "Look, ma'am, we're busy," the officer barked, his tone empty of concern. She felt the fabric of her community unraveling, despair creeping in like a thief in the night. The safety net her brother once wore as a badge now felt like a noose tightening around her neck. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined not to let this drop, Ella and Tyler scoured their neighborhood for answers. They crept through desolate homes, entering a world stripped of warmth, fingers lingering on dusty walls that once held laughter. Each corner felt alive, shadows watching them from behind cracked doorways. Yet the real terror began to seep in with the sounds, whispering voices, shuffling feet echoing where laughter once rang. Was it just her mind playing tricks? Ella's resolve built as they stumbled upon strange symbols drawn in thick, ugly strokes on the sidewalk, graffiti screaming of warnings. They pressed deeper, the air thick with dread. And then the sudden clamor from the alley shattered the silence like glass, sending pulses of fear racing through their veins. Figures emerged, their movements hauntingly jerky, like marionettes operated by unseen hands. She squeezed Tyler's hand tighter, an anchor in the storm of horror surrounding them. But they were not just navigating the streets of their neighborhood, they were stepping onto a battlefield of nightmares. "We're not alone anymore," she breathed, feeling the chill of certainty seep in. The spaces between breaths narrowed as something much darker loomed, and the question was no longer if they would survive, but what hell awaited them next. Ella's heart raced as the cloaked figures advanced, their hollow eyes locking onto her and Tyler. The air grew heavy, stifling her breath. What were they? Shadows of the past? Once familiar faces twisted into grotesque mockeries of humanity. "Run!" she yelled, pulling Tyler back, but not before the sound of a low growl reached her from the throat of the nearest creature. It curled its lips back, revealing teeth stained by something dark and unnameable. They stumbled back, hearts pounding like war drums as they turned, sprinting down the alley. The darkness whispered behind them, close enough to feel like icy fingers trailing down their spines. Each step echoed against the walls, a countdown toward the unknown. "We need to get home," Tyler shouted, eyes wide with terror, adrenaline fueling his words. Ella's mind raced for escape routes while a chorus of unearthly moans bounced off the alley's filthy bricks. They rounded a corner into another street. The dim glow of streetlights felt like safety, but she knew it was a false sense of security. What if they find us? Tyler gasped, the weight of the horror crashing onto his shoulders. Shushing him with a finger to her lips, Ella scanned their surroundings. Every shadow felt alive. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely. They ducked behind a dumpster, breathless, peering through the gaps. From their hiding spot, they saw the figures gather in a cluster at the end of the alley, their movements synchronizing like a grotesque dance, rituals of suffering. She felt the bile rise in her throat, a sense of wrongness that was almost palpable. Then, one of the creatures turned. A flash of recognition sliced through her terror. It was Mrs. Henderson, the sweet old lady who lived 2 blocks down. But this wasn't the same woman. This was something much more horrific. Ella felt sick as the figure began to lurch toward them, her mouth opening in a silent scream. "Mom, what do we do?" Tyler muffled his voice to a whimper, a quiver of pure panic slipping through. Ella could feel the tremors of fear shuddering in his small frame. "We have to move. We have to find a safe place," she replied, already plotting their next step. They couldn't stay in the alley, not with them drawing nearer. The fear that after that night, there wouldn't be a Chicago left for them began to gnaw at her. They crept out from behind the dumpster and sought the nearest entrance, a shuttered convenience store with fading neon signs. The door creaked open, a dreadful sound that felt like a death knell in the tense silence. Once inside, Ella quickly surveyed the cramped aisles, littered with overturned shelves and half-empty shelves. An eerie stillness bent the air. In the flickering light, she felt like she was stepping through an abandoned mausoleum. "Mom!" Tyler whispered, pointing to the far side of the store where something was stirring, shadowy shapes gliding past the windows. A heartbeat thrummed within the walls, vibrating under the skin of the building. The panic in her stomach twisted tighter. "Stay behind me," she said, creeping toward the back. What other horrors lay in wait? The lights bulged ominously, flickering, wrestling with the dark. The sounds of scratching echoed, visceral and grinding. She held her breath as she pressed herself closer to the wall, her fingers trembling against the cool metal of the nearby shelf. She peered cautiously around the corner, dread curling around her heart, and that's when she saw it, a glowing red symbol scratching itself into the floor, pulsing with a life of its own, calling out dark promises. "What is happening?" Ella thought, her mind racing as the creatures outside began to moan in unison, louder and more frantic. Then Tyler's hand jerked her back as more shadows appeared behind her. As they closed in, everything changed. "This isn't just an outbreak, it's a call to something worse," she realized, terror blazing through her. Just then, the lights flickered one last time before darkness enveloped them completely. "Mom!" Tyler's voice was swallowed by the void. "What now?" "What? Escape remained?" In the silence, only the sound of her heartbeat filled the air, growing fainter, as dread loomed in the darkness, waiting for the next move. What lay ahead, and would they survive the night? The darkness felt alive, a thick black shroud that pressed in from all sides. Ella's heart pounded like a war drum against her ribcage, each pulse matching the throbbing dread that echoed in the quiet store. She strained her ears, desperate to catch any sound beyond her own breath, but the silence was absolute. "Hold on tight," she murmured to Tyler, who clutched her side, trembling. The warm, reassuring presence of him steadying her in their world of chaos was a breath of comfort. The faint sound from outside grew stronger, the moans morphing from distant echoes to an escalating crescendo of violent despair. The glowing symbol shimmered on the ground, an impossible hue of crimson pulsating with undeniable intent. Ella's eyes widened, a sickening thought creeping in. It was not merely graffiti. It was a gateway, a summon, a prison for horrors yet to be unveiled. "Mom, it's moving!" Tyler's voice broke the tension as he pointed at the red symbol. A tendril of dark energy slithered from it, worming its way toward them. Time froze. "Back!" Ella's command was fierce as she yanked Tyler away from the encroaching shadow, putting distance between them and an evil that drew nearer. She scanned the store, looking for anything, a weapon, a chance. But the atmosphere thickened, her instincts screamed danger. The scratching sound intensified, a manic rhythm that invaded her mind and heart like lightning through sky. It came from behind the aisles, a furious scrabbling that made her skin crawl. Fine, she hissed under her breath, her mind racing. If we're going to survive, we need to figure this out. In a moment of desperation, she searched each rack, feeling the solid grooves of canned goods beneath her fingers. This wasn't the time to succumb to terror. She steadied herself and moved down the aisle, her mind racing. Peeking around the metal frame of a shelf, she saw the creatures drift through the windows, twisting and writhing like smoke. They swirled, howling in their tortured song, painted shadows sliding on broken glass. Ella, Tyler whimpered, his wide eyes glimmering with fear. We have to get to the back to find an exit, she decided, her voice shaking but determined. The exits were in sight, but the shadows were already slipping through the crack in the door, a dark tide lapping at their heels. Dead silence loomed, punctuated only by the heavy breaths of the united wrongness outside. It was then that she spotted a rusty fire extinguisher hanging askew on the wall. It might be a chance. Stay close, she urged, darting towards it. Each step was a gamble, reverberating dread pulsing through the air. Just as fingers grazed the cold metal, the deep growl of a creature erupted from the shadows, sending a jolt of ice through her veins. Ella spun, adrenaline pushing her forward as she snatched the extinguisher and swung it in readiness. They were surrounded. The figures crept closer, grotesque caricatures of lost life, their hollow eyes gleaming with hunger. A scream caught in her throat as the nearest one lunged forward, clawing at the air. "Mom!" Tyler cried, his voice raw with terror. She felt she couldn't take it anymore. The world constricted around her. With a fierce strength, Ella aimed the extinguisher, pulling the pin just as the embodiment of terror lunged. A white plume exploded into the night, a barrier against the darkness. The frigid spray covered them, a reprieve amid chaos. But just as she hoped for escape, the eerie howl of the creatures morphed into chaotic laughter, cleaving through the air like a blade. They didn't fear the disinterest of chemical fumes. "Keep running!" she yelled, dragging Tyler through the haze. They burst through an opening in the back wall, into the shadows of an empty alley beyond. "Where are we?" Tyler pressed against the cold bricks, panting deeply. Ella turned, voice steady despite the tremors. "I don't know. But there are more secrets being awakened." Their hearts thundered in synchronized terror, the truth sank into the marrow of her bones. This was just the beginning. And then a figure appeared in the distance, a silhouette against the washed-out glow of the moon. A chill threaded through her body as it stepped forward, revealing a face that struck her like lightning, a face she recognized. But it couldn't be possible. "Mom, is that?" Tyler's voice dripped with uncertainty. Yet again, another threat with a familiar mask. Ella paused, caught between the living and the dead. A storm of fear brewed in her chest, the night's horror escalating. What had they awakened? And what other dark truths lay ahead, waiting to ensnare them in its grasp? The figure stepped closer, each movement echoing in the hollow alley. Ella's breath caught in her throat. This was no comforting reunion, it was a horror draped in familiarity. She blinked hard, trying to dispel the nightmare forming before her. "Mom?" Tyler's voice quivered. The figure bore the same face as the mother Ella lost years ago, but the smile was twisted, a parody of affection. Hollow eyes, dull and lifeless, surfaced in that once familiar visage. "Come to me, my sweet child." The echo of her mother's voice spun a web of haunting nostalgia. It felt so wrong. Her instincts screamed danger, but Tyler took a tentative step forward. "Ty, no!" Ella's heart thundered as she lunged, grabbing Tyler's arm. She pulled him back just as a long, skeletal hand stretched toward him, fingers clawing for purchase. The moment felt frozen, terror casting shadows deeper than the night itself. Suddenly, the ground beneath them vibrated. A low rumble resonated like a heartbeat of something monstrous, awakening. Ella glanced around, desperate for escape, but the alley walls seemed to close in. Shadows shifted and pulsed as if sentient, the darkness alive with intent. "Ella, it's Mom!" Tyler whimpered, his wide eyes filled with a mix of wonder and fear. "She's back, no. This is not your mother!" Ella hissed, dragging him back against the wall, her heart racing as she pushed him behind her. The echoes of laughter danced around them, a cruel taunt wrapped in the familiar sound of her mother's voice. With every second, the figure drew nearer, its body contorting into shapes unnatural. Ella could almost make out the outline of a faded memory, a mother shielding her child, a protector. But now, it was corrupted, a blasphemous existence created in the depths of terror. Just then, the world shifted. The alley's entrance dimmed, swallowed by a thick fog rolling in like a tide. The laughter intensified, winding into a symphony of maddening echoes, a cacophony of grief and despair that clawed at her sanity. Ella tightened her grip on Tyler, the fire extinguisher's cold metal pressing into her palm as a desperate reminder of their last stand. "What do we do?" Tyler's voice, barely above a whisper, trembled with desperation. Ella scanned the foggy alley for an escape route. The malice seeped into the air, wrapping around them like tentacles ready to ensnare. She had to act. "Follow my lead. Don't let it touch you." The figure now emerged from the mist, its features warping and sliding, as if still struggling against the dark transformation. "Why don't you come to me, Ella? It's so lonely out here," it beckoned, the soft, mournful tone a sharp contrast to the horror lingering in every shadow. Without warning, a maddening force surged through the fog. Creatures with eyes of glass and mouths gaping in grotesque smiles emerged, converging on them from all sides, fueled by unspeakable hunger. "Run!" Ella screamed, dragging Tyler as panic surged through her veins. The shadowed figures danced, closing in on them, laughter weaving an intricate web of horror around their escape. They sprinted deeper into the alley, heart pounding against the impending doom. Each footfall echoed with desperate hope. The air felt thick with dread, smothering in its weight. Terror clung to them like a second skin. As they reached the end of the alley, a solid wall loomed ahead. But regression was not an option as creatures now flanked their path. The glowing crimson symbol suddenly burst into her thoughts, an image of urgency driving the primal instinct to fight. "Back!" Ella yelled, realizing they were cornered. She spun in a circle, lifted the fire extinguisher as a bulwark against the spreading shadows. They twisted ominously, beckoning them to surrender. It would take one brave push to escape the nightmare. For her and for Tyler. Sweat dripped down her face, heart pounding in rhythm with the sinister whispers spiraling around them. Tyler's voice cut through the dark, a whisper barely carried by the wind. As the wall was closing in, she knew she had to decide. Face this twisted version of her past, or find a way to fight against the unknown horrors lurking just beyond their sight. Would she have the strength? "I won't let it take you," she vowed, raising the extinguisher high. But before she could strike, cold fingers grazed her shoulder, the world spinning violently as darkness threatened to envelop them both. The laughter rose, drowning out her thoughts. What had they unleashed? What lay waiting in the shadows as they fought to survive? Ella felt a shiver ripple through her body as the chill of cold fingers lingered on her shoulder. Time warped, a heartbeat stretched into a lifetime. The air thickened, filled with invisible hands grasping at her resolve. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but the shadows pressed closer, their grotesque forms swirling like a storm of despair. "Run, Ella!" Tyler's voice broke through the haze, but it felt distant, muffled. She turned, desperation igniting within her. Tyler was still behind her, eyes wide with fear, yet rooted to the spot as if shackled by the presence before them. The figure's face morphed, shifting between her mother's familiar smile and a deep, unsettling grimace. "I miss you, Ella." You never visited. The words dripped like poison, each syllable twisting memories into something grotesque. "No! This couldn't be happening. Tyler, we have to go." Ella's voice was hoarse from panic, heart racing against the dread swirling around them. She could feel the weight of it, a suffocating smog that threatened to sap her strength. Memories flooded her mind, the warmth of family dinners, the safety of a mother's embrace. But she had to remember, this wasn't her mother. This was a monster masquerading in the remnants of her past. The laughter began to rise again, echoing off the alley walls, intertwining with the whispering night an unholy orchestrated symphony. Ella's grip tightened around the fire extinguisher as her fingers warmed against the metal, a metallic reassurance that she could still fight. "Tyler!" she shouted again, urgency fueling her voice. "Close your eyes. Trust me." In quick, deliberate movements, she turned toward the advancing shadows, fire extinguisher raised high. She had to act. There was no time to ponder the consequences. Time distorted further, each second dragging, revealing shadows creeping behind the walls, hungry for her despair. With a desperate swing, she brought down the extinguisher, unleashing a cold plume of foam toward the creature. A hiss filled the air as the Arctic blast struck the figure. For a moment the laughter stopped, replaced by a cry that resembled her mother's voice, distorted into a wretched sound of agony. "Ella," it cried, retreating briefly, but the others surged forward, eyes glinting with predation. Emerging from the fog, more shadows rallied, encasing them in a living nightmare. The walls of the alley seemed to close in tighter, watching them like prey. "Run!" Tyler's words snapped her back to reality. They darted to the side, breaking for a small gap barely illuminated by a flickering streetlight. The darkness clawed at their heels, whispers urging despair, but at that moment, they were fueled by sheer survival. As they squeezed through, the alley burst into a street, open but filled with haunting stillness. No friendly faces, no escaping to safety, just that thick, unsettling air suffocating any sense of hope. "Where do we go?" Tyler's voice trembled, panic laced in every word, breathless and desperate. "I don't know. Just keep moving," Ella replied, scanning the empty street. Neon signs flickered, struggling against the oppressive darkness. Their path seemed uncertain, twisting back into shadows. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of movement, a figure, standing still near the mouth of another alley. No face, just a silhouette shrouded in the same fog that chased them. Ella's heart dropped as a twisted recognition washed over her. "Wait!" she gasped. But before she could warn Tyler, the figure stepped forward, revealing a gaping mouth and eyes full of darkness. This was no mere shadow. This was the embodiment of their fears, coming to life. "Don't look back," she whispered fiercely, gripping Tyler's wrist. The terror surged back, stronger now, soaking into her bones. If they didn't escape, would this be the end? And then, just as they pivoted to run, the twisted echo of her mother's laughter rang out again, distorted and unrelenting. It chased them, a chilling reminder that there was no safety from the past. "I can't let this happen!" she yelled out, in a fit of desperation, but the shadow surged ahead, forcing them both into a tighter embrace of darkness. What had she unleashed? And how could they outrun the weight of memories that had come back to haunt them? As the shadows enveloped them, the suffocating darkness echoed the haunting refrain of despair. Would they find a way to escape, or would the past consume them both? The street felt alive, the fog wrapping around Ella and Tyler like a serpent tightening its grip. Panic clawed at Ella's throat, every instinct urging her to run faster. They dashed down the dimly lit road, breathless, hearts pounding in rhythm with the pounding of their footsteps. "Where?" Tyler gasped, his voice shaky, straining against the smothering silence. The city should have been bustling, filled with laughter and chatter, but instead, it lay still, a tomb cloaked in despair. "Just anywhere away from that thing," Ella replied, struggling to focus. They veered left, onto an unlit side street, alleyways branching off like spider legs. The weight of darkness pressed down, wrapping though even the sound of their footsteps seemed muted. They pushed on, tension coursing through their limbs. But then they heard it, the whisper of laughter. High-pitched, not like anything human. It mixed with the faint echo of her mother's voice, the timbre both familiar and horrifying. The laughter bounced off the brick walls, each sound sending icy shivers down her spine. Tyler's voice cracked, tiny and drowning in fear. "Don't listen. Just keep looking ahead," she urged, her mind racing. The last thing she remembered was her mother's face, contorting into something monstrous. Ella fought to shove the memory down, but it lurked in the corners of her mind, waiting. She needed a grip, something tangible, something real. They stumbled onto a small square, once cheerful with fountains and benches, now obscured beneath shadows. Weirdly, it felt slightly warmer here. Maybe it was a false comfort, an illusion tempting them to linger. Do you see that? Tyler pointed across the square, eyes wide. What? Ella squinted against the gloom. There was movement. From the edges of the fog that danced lazily against the darkness, shadows twisted and coalesced into shapes they could almost recognize. Faces began to emerge, looking just like people Ella had known, people who had become lost, just like her. Turn around, Tyler whispered hoarsely. But something gripped her, an unseen force pinning her feet to the ground. No, she could barely breathe. There was laughter again, not from the shadows this time, but echoing from everywhere and nowhere. The sound grew richer, closer, resonating deep within her bones. Ella! Tyler shouted, pulling her by the arm, a frantic tug against the invisible chains holding her. The laughter intensified, enveloping them both. It felt infectious, wrapping around her mind, making her question everything, her memories, her sanity. Just then, Ella caught sight of Tyler's face. It twisted in horror, mirroring what she'd felt inside. The air shifted, the shadows lurked nearer, swirling in hunger. Move! She screamed, adrenaline jolting her into action. They dashed toward a rusted door at the far end of the square, its latch barely clinging. They reached it, heart pounding as Ella pushed against it. Please let it open. She begged the universe, fear surging through her like fire. It creaked slowly, the darkness spilling in behind them. They fell inside, tumbling to the cold, damp floor. Ella's heart raced as she slammed the door, panic causing her to fumble with the latch. As she leaned against it, gasping for breath, she heard a soft voice from the shadows behind her. You can't escape, Ella, you brought me here. Ella froze, the words curling around her insides like a vice. What had she unleashed? The figure that had followed them from the alley loomed closer, its presence an overwhelming pressure. Who are you? She gasped, fear licking her insides. I am the past, remember? Heart racing, Ella turned around just as the darkened figure stepped forward, and in the flickering light, she finally recognized the haunting familiarity. No, she whispered, the breath escaping her lips in disbelief. And as Tyler urged her to look away, the shadows swirled tighter, threatening to drown them both. Look where? She stammered, paralyzed by fear and the echo of doubt. The shadows closed in around them, the laughter now a thunderous roar. What if the truth about her past was far darker than she ever imagined? The only way out was deeper into the darkness. But how far would it take them? The darkness wrapped around them like a wet blanket, heavy and suffocating. Ella blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the disorienting shadows that clawed at her mind. Tyler's presence, once a comforting anchor, began to feel like a flickering flame in an expanding storm of dread. What do you mean, the past? Ella whispered, her voice barely a twig in the overwhelming forest of noise. She could see the figure clearly now, a silhouette of memories. It blended horror and nostalgia. The shadows behind it writhed as if possessing a life of their own. Don't you remember? The figure's voice was chillingly sweet, like an old, broken record playing a haunting lullaby. You summoned me with your fears, your regret. We were always meant to dance this night. No, no, I don't want this. Panic flooded Ella's veins. She looked at Tyler, whose eyes were wide with confusion and terror. We have to get out of here. Suddenly, the floor shuddered beneath them. It felt alive, heaving like a wounded beast. Tyler stumbled, catching Ella just in time as they spun towards the door. She yanked on the rusted handle, but it wouldn't budge. The figure's laughter echoed through the cramped space, taunting, beckoning. It's too late, it giggled, a sound that twisted Ella's gut. You invited the dark in. Let it show you the truth. A flicker of light caught her eye, a small sliver beneath an old, cracked window high above them. Maybe she could climb. Tyler, help me. What about that thing? He croaked. His voice was strained. The shadows were closing in, elongating and swallowing the corners of the room. Trust me, she yelled, urgency fueling her strength. As she hoisted herself onto a pile of debris, She felt Tyler's hands on her waist, lifting her up, but it felt so wrong in that moment. The figure began to sway hypnotically, drawing their gaze and demanding submission. The door rattled, pressed against by an unseen force. Screams bubbled up from Ella's throat, nearly drowning her in dread. "Don't look at it!" She kicked against the wall, pushing herself to grasp the ledge. In a single powerful leap, she grabbed the edge of the window. "I'm almost there." Her fingers slipped, gripped only by desperation. The laughter swelled, shadows dancing in a frenzy just beneath her feet. Blood rushed in her ears, drowning out all rational thought. Something cold brushed against her leg, sending a bolt of agony through her. She glanced down. It was the figure, half submerged in swirling darkness, reaching for her like a child's hand in a playground. Its face twisted, revealing a mix of familiar and grotesque. "Ella, stay no!" she shouted, hoisting herself up, and felt the world tilt violently before crashing into a hollow space beyond the window. Tyler's scream pierced through the haze as he stumbled backward. The door slammed open, hunger poured through. The figure shifted behind him, a writhing mass of regrets and lost souls. "Tyler!" Ella cried from the ledge. The darkness poured into the room like a flood, consuming everything in its path. She couldn't breathe. And then she felt something shift within her, heritage hidden behind lock and key began to unfurl. Memories tumbled out like ghosts, awakening monstrous truths she had buried deeply. Pieces of her past surged forward, unraveling the cords of her life, revealing the connections that tied the haunting figure to her. "Ella, I didn't mean." Tyler's voice trembled as the shadows snatched at him, pulling. "Let go of him!" Ella screamed, raw fear burning her throat. The air crackled as a storm of energy thrummed between them. But what power did she hold? Could she save him? The world twisted, collapsing around her, inviting her to enter deeper. In the whirlpool of shadows, secrets boiled. What secrets awaited them? Temptations to confront, demons to embrace or escape. Ella stared into the abyss, knowing the only choice left was to leap, potentially sealing their fates forever. Would they emerge whole, or was this the beginning of an irreversible end? Ella landed with a thud, the cold, hard ground jarring her senses. Reality crashed back quickly, the shadows receding only slightly behind her. She shot a glance at the window, at the swirling darkness still clawing at her, and her heart raced. She could barely swallow, her breath coming in quick gasps, yet the world around her was eerily silent, as if she had fallen into a void. "Ella!" Tyler's voice echoed through the air, thin and stretched, teasing her sanity. She turned quickly, panic flooding her. She couldn't see him anymore. The darkness beyond the window pulsed like it breathed thick, relentless, hungry. "Tyler!" she called, voice hoarse. "Where are you?" No answer came, just that deafening quiet. A paranoia gnawed at her, creeping along her skin, prickling like 1,000 tiny needles. There was a flicker, a shadow darting between what little light dared to touch the space she inhabited. Ella squinted, trying to pierce through the smog of dread. And then she saw it. A figure, disjointed and flickering like a bad signal on an old television. It stepped into a patch of light barely illuminating the space. "Ella!" It was a whisper that slithered around her, soft yet penetrating. "Who are you?" she demanded, fear anchoring her feet to the ground. "What do you want?" "It's not what I want," it replied, voice echoing with a sinister undertone. "It's what you've called for. You come back, Ella. You can't run from the truth." "The truth?" The shadows danced lovingly around the specter, their caress almost melodic. Ella could feel the weight of memories pressing in on her, suffocating her will to flee. "Get away from me!" she shouted, trembling. With a sudden surge of courage, she took a step toward the figure. "You're not real. You can't be." The figure smiled, a grotesque elation painting its features. "But I am. And you're going to embrace me, or he will pay the price." "Tyler!" The name fled her lips like a wounded animal. The figure leaned closer, casting long tendrils of shadow that snaked onto the ground and curled around Ella's ankles. "You've always blamed yourself for what happened, but it's time to face the fact. This is your legacy. You summoned this darkness, all of it, first the regret, then the truth. A rush of fluorescent memories surged within her, visions of shouts, blame, the echoes of pain. Charlie, the words of horror would echo forever, its weight still crashing down upon her today. She was drawn and repelled at once. Let him go! Ella cried out, her legs shaking against the creeping darkness. He has nothing to do with this. It was never just about him. The figure's voice curled around her like iron chains. You wear it like a mask, Ella, but the moment you invited me in, you unleashed a curse. Ella felt the air shift, a pulse of power radiating through the shadows as the figure wrapped around her, pressing tight, squeezing every ounce of fight from her. She gasped at the shifting energy, an ancient pulse coursing through her veins, awakening something lurking deep within. Then, without warning, the shadows ripped away, tossing her back into reality. She found herself standing before another door, one she had never noticed before. It waited silent, tempting her forward, the handle glistening with a familiar shimmer. Should she open it? The figure's laughter echoed in the corners of her thoughts. Choose, Ella. The door holds more than you know. Will you find Tyler? Or will you uncover something more monstrous? Her heart raced, fueled by fear and resolve, drowning in uncertainty. Whatever lay behind that door was waiting to be unleashed. Would she open it and chance what awaited her on the other side? What if it meant losing everything, or worse, losing Tyler forever? With shaking hands, she raised her fingers to the handle, every sense screaming, knowing that they were on the threshold of an unspeakable terror. What horrors lurked just past that door? Ella's fingers trembled as they brushed against the cold, metal door handle. The weight of the choice pressed down on her, heavier than the shadows that had just receded. In the stillness, the world outside felt trapped, hushed as if holding its breath. She could almost hear a distant whisper, enticing her to uncover the secrets that lay beyond. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the handle tighter. The moment she twisted it, the door creaked, a sound like a lament. As it swung open, a wave of dread washed over her, engulfing her senses. A dimly lit corridor stretched before her, tiles cracked and pulsing with an unearthly light. It was as though the space pulsed with its own heartbeat, teasing, taunting her with its intimacy. Lights flickered above like dying fireflies, and the air grew thick with a sweet, sickly scent that twisted her stomach. She hesitated on the threshold, fear coursing through her veins, tendrils of doubt coiling around her resolve. What if? But she couldn't let the thoughts finish. She could almost hear Tyler's voice, distant yet sharp through the haze, calling out to her in desperation. Pushing forward, she stepped into the corridor. The shadows pressed against her, hugging her tightly like a second skin. With every step, memories crashed against her mind, the arguments, the blame, and Charlie's face twisted with terror. Each step felt like she was moving deeper into her own hell, a place of regrets and nightmares that she had been running from all her life. Elia! The phantom voice echoed again, more pleading than before. Was it Tyler? Or was it the figure that had beckoned her here? It rolled against the walls, echoed in the darkness. How was she supposed to know which voice to follow? As she walked deeper into the passage, she noticed marks on the walls, scratches and claw marks done with frantic energy. Panic erupted in her chest. This wasn't just an ordinary place. It was a tomb of fears and pain, a prison that held not only her demons but possibly Tyler too. The corridor widened, eventually spilling into what looked like an abandoned room, its once gleaming surface now tarnished and littered with debris. A large mirror covered in dust hung crookedly on the wall. She felt drawn to it, an insatiable urge overwhelming her as she moved closer, the dusty glass offering hints of movement. But what reflected back at her was not her own face. Twisting shadows morphed into twisted grins, stretching wider as if relishing her horror. Suddenly, screams shattered the air, distant yet hauntingly familiar. It was Tyler's voice, raw and echoing, ripping through the fabric of her thoughts. Ella! Help! Her heart convulsed. Determination surged through her veins, drowning out the brewing terror. I'm coming, Tyler! She screamed. But the moment she turned back to the passage, the walls began to shudder, cloaked in darkness as if the corridor itself was alive, shifting to trap her. No! Ella shouted, racing toward the mirror, desperate to find a way through. The shadows shrieked, twisting around her ankles, pulling her back, seeking to swallow her and what remained of her sanity. Panic clawed at her throat as she looked back at the mirror one last time. "Face it, Ella! The truth shall set you free!" the echoes jeered. With a burst of adrenaline, she charged forward, arms outstretched, ready to break through. Would she pass through to find Tyler, or would she be consumed by the darkness that had haunted her, over and over again? In that final, fearful moment, she launched herself at the mirror, not knowing what lay beyond the reflection, her freedom, or her doom. As she plunged forward, a blinding light erupted, and everything melted into chaos, blurring her perception of time and space. What truth awaited her on the other side? Light exploded around Ella, painfully bright, searing into her eyes and filling her heart with both fear and hope. It felt like being born anew, shoving past darkness to embrace a blinding truth. She stumbled through the mirror, the cool glass shimmer giving way to a new reality. As she fell through space, the air changed. It filled with a scent she recognized: freshly cut grass, baking bread, laughter. She landed softly on a familiar porch, the rays of sun warm against her skin. The world was alive here, a kaleidoscope of color and vibrancy. "Mom?" The voice sent shivers down her spine. Tyler. He was right there, standing at the bottom of the stairs, a smile plastered across his face, that boyish innocence shining through. Tyler! Ella rushed down to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Relief washed over her like a tide. But then the moment shifted. His eyes were wide with concern, not joy. "I was so scared, Ella. Where did you go?" Pain enveloped her heart. Reality clicked as she realized they weren't truly free yet. The shadows were still lurking just beyond the borders of this illusion, a fever dream built on wishes unmet and fears unshackled. "What's going on?" she stammered, pulling back to scan their surroundings again. Nothing felt right, as if this idyllic scene was merely a facade. "We have to go back," Tyler urged, pointing toward the looming shadows that now crept from the edge of the porch, slithering through blades of grass and creeping up the steps. "No! I'm not going back there!" she cried, fear rising in her chest. She had fought through the darkness for him. The last thing she wanted was for them to be dragged back into that hell. Tyler's expression shifted, fear replaced with something deeper. "You have to, Mom." His voice was steady, yet filled with urgency. "You have to face what you summoned. It's the only way we'll be safe." The ground shook beneath their feet, cracks appearing like haunts of their shared nightmares. Ella's stomach twisted. The shadows glimmered, whispering promises of despair, and she felt the weight of souls lost to darkness pressing against her mind. "No! I'm not leaving you!" she shouted, defiance in every syllable, fighting the urge to retreat. "We can't stay here," Tyler insisted, eyes blazing with determination. "The truth, Mom. You have to open that door and make it right. For us. For all of them." Ella swallowed hard, mind racing. This moment would define everything. It was the culmination of every secret she had buried within her. The fear was suffocating, but so was the resolve to free them. If she had to face the shadows lurking within, she wouldn't do it alone. "All right, Ty. I'll do it, I'll face it," she whispered, determination coursing through her veins. With a deep breath, she grasped his hand. Together, they turned toward the dark edge of the porch, stepping bravely into the churning tide of shadows that beckoned them back. The warmth of the sun faded as they crossed the threshold, the laughter turning hollow, darkness swirling around them like a tempest intent on consuming what remained of their hope. "We're together. That's what matters," Ella shouted into the dark, clinging to the strength of their bond. And then, just as the darkness began to close in, the air surged with sudden energy. "I am not scared of you," she roared, facing the figure that emerged from the depths of the shadows. It took form, an echo of her past, her fears, her failures. The grotesque smile twisted, reveling in her uncertainty. "You think you own me?" As light pierced the veil of darkness, illuminating the space, she felt Tyler's hand squeeze reassuringly. "This is our moment, Ty. No more running. She pushed forward, gathering all of her strength as she faced the figure that blurred the lines of their reality. And just as the shadows lunged, she swung a fierce blow of truth and love. Away from us! She screamed, every ounce of pain channeled through her voice. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, the figure contorted, the haunting laughter fracturing like glass. Tyler stood by her side, face determined, unwavering. Together, they tore through the flickering darkness, disassembling the twisted memories that had held them captive for so long. Light burst once more, engulfing them as the darkness splintered, freeing not just Ella and Tyler, but the souls trapped within the shadows surrounding them. And then, they were outside. Breathing, alive. The real world welcomed them back, the city a tapestry of color, laughter echoing vividly through the streets of Chicago. Ella wrapped her arms around her son, clutching tightly. We did it, we survived. Together? Tyler asked, grinning broadly. Always together, she promised, chest tight with emotion. There was hope where once there had been despair. The city was healing. As they walked down the street, hand in hand, the shadows receded, banished by the simplest truth of love and courage. But now, they were home, safe and free, walking into tomorrow, an undeniable testament to resilience. Before the screen fades to black, remember, don't let the story stop here. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that bring to life the secrets and struggles of the human heart. Smash that like button now, it helps the algorithm. And we need your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories on what happens next. Share your thoughts. We're so curious about which characters resonated with you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep the conversation going, because only true fans understand the importance of standing together in this journey.